So, welcome to the show, Gavin. I'm super, super excited to share your story and hopefully inspire some people out there because I know that personally I was inspired by everything that you're doing and have done and just how awesome of a person you are. So, I'm super excited to share
You?
about you with everybody.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I'm excited to basically dive into everything with everybody, and yeah, just kind of rock and roll from there, and hopefully really help some people, provide some value with what we talk about today.
And I love that about you. You're always here to provide value. I think that's such a good way to come into any situations. Like, what value can I provide? What value can I be to
Yeah.
other people? And you completely embody that in everything and how you show up. So I just want to hats off to you on
Oh,
that.
well, thank you so much for that. It's kind of interesting. I guess I'll start with this. I know this isn't a question, so I'll make it concise. But one thing that I found is really interesting is I would always go looking to give in any situation I'm in, because I just, try to live from a place of abundance. Now, here's the funny thing is I thought I was living from a place of abundance. And this is like a really recent, like within this week thing that I've been working on, like, and like thought more. But here's the thing. If somebody said something, like one of my friends actually, um, we were basically, he gave me an opportunity to come out to Colorado, and shoot some content with him and another mutual friend of ours. Well, going to be mutual, like they're kind of already friends, but either way, I basically introduced him. He's like, hey, you should just come too. It'd be a great time. It'd be good for this. I'll also introduce you to these people, whatever. And he's like, and I'll pay for, your flight and your hotel. Like, don't even worry about it. I got you. Thanks for helping me out with this or whatever. And I'm like that. And I just felt so uncomfortable because I felt like I was like taking like more than I was giving in that exact scenario.
Mhm.
Which is, debatable even in itself. But my point is this. I feel like there's probably a lot of people who may listen that would feel really uncomfortable in those situations or whatever. Like I literally like felt like uncomfortable, like did not like
Mhm.
it. But he actually challenged me and basically was like, hey, you're kind of living from a scarcity mindset in that sense of like no one's keeping score here. If you feel like you're taking more than you're giving, as long as you're hanging out with people who have alignment and value goals, it's like we're not keeping score. Nobody's like, so it's okay to be taking more than you feel like you're giving or whatever, and just have the abundance of like, oh, everything will play out exactly how it's supposed to in the end. Like we're not here to play some short term, like, because that in itself is a bit of a scarcity mindset. But either way, I just appreciate you. I appreciate the values that you have, and I just wanted to share that kind of even on that before we get into things, because I think that's something valuable that like isn't
Yeah,
talked about a
no, for
lot. That
sure.
has been the kind of interesting discovery for me recently.
Yeah, no, actually, that's something that's funny that you say that because I had a similar experience with a friend,
Mhm.
and we were talking about how some people they keep track of everything, like give, receive, to make sure everything is even, and
Yeah.
that is coming from a scarcity mindset versus just
Yes.
showing up and if you're receiving something, be open to receiving it, and when you can give
Yes.
something, give it. And I feel like coming from that space, there's a cycle, there's a flow that comes with it. You
Yeah.
give, you receive, and if you just allow it to move in that direction, whatever that direction is. I think it comes full cycle anyway at some point. But keeping track of it itself and like being like, oh, I can't receive. It is a scarcity mindset. Um,
Yes.
so I love that you shared that. So I know about what you do, but I'd love for you to kind of share a little bit about what you do and your journey and what got you here today.
For sure, for sure. So yeah, the full name is just, Gavin Lira. Lira is Lira. And basically I run a PR firm is the simplest way to put it. So I'll kind of explain what I do, and then I'll rewind a little bit. And like you said, the journey and how I got there. And I'll give the more concise yet in detail enough version of it to, be interesting. Instead of just the I run a PR firm, but like basically what we do is we help get people in large publications, place them on large podcasts, things of the sort. And really we look at a business, we look at how they're currently acquiring business. So we typically work with B2B businesses, though we do have a few B2C that we work with. It just is a bit different of a process than the example I'm about to. But we'll look at a business, and let's say we're working with a marketing agency that helps commerce brands scale online, right? And I'll ask that person, okay, well, how do you acquire business, right? Like, what does that look like for you? And they might say, well, we send cold emails to different e-commerce brands. And in those cold emails is a short Loom video of us basically giving their brand an audit and showing them what they could be doing and what they're currently not doing. Kind of like, I'm like, okay, well, if that's the case, how could we get you press that basically not only serves you when those people look up your company, so it shows up and you're basically being validated by a third party that has reviews on your company. They're basically you're getting featured for the methodologies you teach and implement with your clients, and your clients are being highlighted, and from a third party source that doesn't have a vested interest in that business. But what we also do is we're like, how can we make that convert better for cold email? For example, with that client, we might get them featured in Forbes, which then they could use, as seen on Forbes in their email signature, and even have a GIF as their profile photo on email. Yeah. That has like their name and then as seen on Forbes, etc., or something of the sort. Like, that's how ours is structured, because I've A/B tested it, and we have a better reply rate that way for cold messaging. And when we have a better reply rate, you book more meetings. When you book more meetings, you close more deals, you make more money. And then there's other things too, just with like even mentioning it on that Loom, like, yeah, this is actually something that we've been featured in Forbes for. And then like, going to that feature on the Loom recording and saying like, you can see right here, blah, blah, blah. And then showing them like, so there's certain ways that you can leverage these things more directly. And we really help people not only just get the press, but get the most out of it and basically get the biggest ROI for their business. There's a few other services we do, but that's like the 80-20 of it. Yeah. And yeah, do you just want me to kind of like break down, I guess, how I got to that point then? Like,
I'd love for you to,
my story.
It's, Empathy Firm. That whole story of, firstly, why it's called the Empathy Firm, and a little bit about your background. And, I know that you were going down the path of becoming was it a therapist?
I wasn't like super into it, but when I say into it, I mean like involved, like committed to anything, but I was on a mental path.
You were on a mental, So kind of bridging that for us, I'd love to hear that whole side of things, because I think from a passion perspective, you're obviously a very passionate person about what you do, what you stand for, and empathy is a big part that plays into all of it. So I'd love for you to dive into that for us.
For sure. Yeah, I'm happy to share kind of like the story and how, because it's all intertwined, and like why it's actually called the Empathy Firm. Just all that. So I appreciate you asking. So basically, it started when it's kind of funny that I'm starting in middle school here, right? But I'm actually 21 right now. For anybody who's listening or whatnot. But when I was in middle school, I used to stay up pretty late at night on an app called Kick Messenger on my iPod, it was at the time. And I
had an iPod Touch too, Kick Messenger was
I thought it was sick because I got the one, like, it was my first iPod was the one when they just came out with the cameras on the iPods. I was like, oh, this is like so sick. I'm like, but basically I had this iPod, and everyone would message each other on Kick Messenger. It just was like a popular messaging platform for whatever reason. And I would stay up late just helping my peers, not all of them clearly, but a good amount of them, with problems that they had. And just because I like helping people is something that's, for whatever reason, and I'm really just thankful to God, like, for this, I've just always felt inclined kind of to do, even though I do think it's a skill that, like, I've clearly refined my skill and it can be developed more and whatnot, but I really just enjoyed helping people. And I would basically stay up late. And during that time, I developed a lot of empathy, because when you're talking to a lot of different people who all have different scenarios and they have different problems, and there's multiple people involved in those problems, and you're not trying to just make them feel good by saying, like, oh, great, like, you're totally right, you should be mad at this person or whatever. Like, how can you actually help them with a solution, right? To the problem that is going to actually benefit them, like, out of what they control. So that involved a lot of thinking from everyone's point of view, which really is empathy, is putting yourself in someone else's shoes and seeing from their perspective and feeling from their perspective and understanding what their thought process is like, how they feel, how they perceive things. And, just doing that with a lot of people, to help them out, because in order to help someone, I need to understand the people who they're having conflicts with. Why are those conflicts happening? What do they think? How are they perceiving the situation? What do they believe? And that doesn't mean that the other person's right, or that the person who's, came to me is right either. It just is like, what is the reality, so we can take it from there and then find what the best solution for you, specifically the person who I'm helping, would be. Because if I if I just always took everything that they were saying at surface level, they'd be a lot of times in the same situation that they're in, because that's kind of how they're perceiving things and thinking about things. So it's kind of that, and then allowing basically to find, okay, well, what do we control out of this scenario, and how can we focus on that, and what can we do about that, right? Because especially when you're young, there's some things that you don't control sometimes, if it's about your parents, or about whatever it may be. So basically did that, and then in high school, I continued it into like earlier high school, just like helping a lot of people. I just got so busy with so many things. I was in like show choir. I started, while I was continuing playing sports, like homework ramped up. And then like, there's my own personal life with just like, so it was honestly just too much. It's not that I didn't continue doing it. I just needed to put myself, which is always important to do. And however, I still always had like the urge, and like just really liked helping people, and I would when I could, just not at the same frequency of which I used to, like, or more so the quantity of which I used to. But basically, when I was a junior in high school, I came across a YouTube video. In the YouTube video, I was just bored, like on a YouTube rabbit hole. It said how to start an online store with $0 down on YouTube. I clicked on it. It was like 8 minutes. I'm like, this is probably a scam, but I'm bored. It went into the business method of drop shipping. And I was like, this actually seems legit. Like, I should, like, I'm pretty poor right now. Like, I had like $300, and unfortunately I wasn't paying for like, my rent or things of the sort, or,
and how
my
old were you
food.
at this
Like,
point?
so I was a junior, which means I would be 17, I believe.
Okay, so 17, $300. You saw this
Yeah.
video.
Yeah, 17, $300, saw this YouTube video, and was like, I was, well, I'm allowed to use profanity on this podcast. But
I'd rather you
no,
not.
Okay, I won't. I'll keep it PG. So I was like, frick it. And basically, I was like, I'll just try this. It seems like a good way to just go throughout this, to basically make money.
Yeah, so
I didn't have a
so
job
you're
at
just
the
like,
time,
okay, I'm 17, I got $300, I saw this YouTube video, and you're like,
and it said $0 down, and I'm
would
like,
love to make some more money.
yeah. I mean, and it seemed like a really smart way to make money too, because it seemed like I was going to be making thousands of dollars my first month, and like, all these, honestly, I thought I was going to make like $5,000 my first week. Like, I thought I was just going to be like, okay, I make a store, I hit launch, and then like all this money just comes in. But it was very much of the opposite of that. My first store, the only person who bought anything was my mom. I basically lost the money I had at the time, which was the $300. So it's not like I was in like a terrible situation. It's just kind of like, oh, well, there that goes. And then I just worked some odd jobs, like, refereeing basketball games that summer, and just like weed whacking, things of the sort. Made some more money, got back into that summer, and launched another store, which is actually still live right now. I keep it up each year because I like it as a reminder. I even put in the chat just for the lols of it. It's Gary's GADGETS.net, Gary'sGadgets.net. And basically it was just another general store. And well, this one was a more general store, and I was testing a lot of different products, except this time I ran Facebook ads. Before, I only did influencer marketing of like hitting up pages that were bigger in my niche that I was like had the store in. But now I was running paid traffic using Facebook ads to it. And I actually started to like get sales, but it was primarily like a break-even situation. And I did that for a few months, and I was like, okay, this is interesting, because I was like, I feel like if I had a more unique product or service or a brand behind what I was doing, I would be able to make this whole like Facebook ad thing work, with, basically driving more revenue. But, with drop shipping, what I found is just that everyone's selling the same thing. So it really comes down to like who can outmarket each other. And I just wasn't that great of a marketer at the time. Like, I could have ordered a product, maybe made a really cool video, but I was just like, I just think if I went to a local business and did this, like it could really help them, and it would potentially be like a quicker way to achieving my goal. So I basically did that, which is how I got into the agency space first and foremost. And I had this client who only paid me like $300 a month. And I'm not saying like only, it was my first ever client in that. It was a handyman. He was a contractor. And he basically would do like kitchen bathroom models or like power washing or basically anything that like is kind of in that realm, right? And it actually worked well that he fired me after 3 months, because he was like booked out for like, 1 or 2 months, like in advance from that point of where we were at. And I was just like, okay, well, this stuff is clearly working. And I actually wasn't that upset.
How old
Just
were
kind of
you
happy.
at this point?
At this point, I was either still 17 or 18. I think 18 at this.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I was a senior in high school now at this point. Is like I started when I was junior with the drop shipping stuff, kind of like towards the end of my junior year. And then at this point I'm a senior. Yeah, basically though, just went out then, just learned from I literally cold call someone who ran a digital market. I'm from Wisconsin. So here in Madison, Wisconsin, it's about 30, 45 minutes away from me, depending on which part you're going to. And there was this dude who ran a digital marketing agency there. And I knew he was successful just because I heard about him from some other people. And I was just kind of like, okay, let me call him. And so I actually just went to his website and just called the number on his website and left a voice note. And he actually gave me a call back. And I just, at that point, I knew how to grow Instagram accounts because it was something else I started doing on the side for money as well. And I was like, hey, I checked out your Instagram. Like, I feel like, I was like, I know I could basically help you grow more. If you're interested, I'd love to learn more about what you do as well. Like, here's kind of my situation. And he was like, yeah, I actually really appreciate how you're approaching that and kind of like leading with value. And instead of just asking, hey, can I pick your brain? Yeah. But and plus just being a younger person, honestly, a lot of these people that are more successful now, they do feel like very grateful for where they're at. And they typically had mentors along the way, people that helped them. So they're a lot more likely to even like say yes. So he was like, yeah, for sure. We met up at a Starbucks. He really helped me just understand a few more things about the space. He made a LinkedIn post, and I actually ended up working with like 2 clients from that LinkedIn post that he made of us. Cause what I did is everybody who basically liked that or commented like, wow, way to go, Gavin, like way to lead with value and like cold call. So like whatever, blah, blah, blah. It went like semi-viral on LinkedIn. And I say semi, meaning like, I don't know how many people are reached, not like hundreds of thousands, but like tens of thousands, and I just connected with every single person who commented or liked that post. I sent them like a personalized connection request, a message or whatever. And yeah, so I ended up meeting with 2 of them. And I had 2 clients out of that. So it basically just kept growing from there, like oddball things where I slowly started raising my prices. Then I started a podcast. So I started a podcast, and the point of the podcast and why this is relevant to this story is that I met 2 people on that podcast as well. Cause I mean, who is so important, right? And I interviewed 2 people. Their names are Brett Knudsen was one of them and Jeff Fenster was the other. And they both really served afterwards, kind of built a relationship with them. And they really served to me as mentors and really helped me and actually taught me more about the PR space, which is how I got into that. And this is all happening while I started college, and then I dropped out. And I basically dropped out while getting mentored from these guys and just learning more about these spaces. And COVID happened, and I was just like, financially makes sense. And I just really I just felt like I was honestly wasting my time at college when it comes to an education standpoint. Like the people were awesome and there is value in people, but I was so into what I was doing work wise. I like literally after the first few months, I didn't go to any parties. I would like just grind on what I got to get done. And then I had to do this other thing called school, which was really just a big distraction for me. So, I just learned so much more from like what I was doing and the people I was learning from, the mentors I was getting, the people I was interviewing on podcasts, etc. So I just decided to go all in on that. And I dropped out about like last year at semester. And I've been doing this full time since, and, it was legally incorporated since 2019, though it happened before then. So 2019, 2022, but this is the last year and a few months I've been going full time on it. And I've learned the PR space because of Jeff and Brett. And then I've learned things, now we have a team of 5 people, full time, 5 people at least. We have some other contractors we work with too, but So I'm just really grateful for all, where I'm at though. And that's just kind of my longer yet concise enough to understand the steps in it journey.
Now, you made some really great points, that I just want to make sure that I really touch upon, because one, leading with value and the way you approach people, like, it's, if you went up to someone and was like, hey, I'm gonna show up and want to connect with you from a place of value, you are so much more likely to firstly connect with that person that you actually want to connect with. Secondly,
Yes.
if you're a younger person, people appreciate that so much, because they're
Yeah.
like, wow, you know what, for your age and the way that you're approaching this situation, and that you want to come from a place of value and learning, and just like, let me be a sponge to soak in, all of what you are, from a mentor's perspective, or just anyone you look up to, they appreciate that so much, because they know what it's like to be in your shoes. So
Yeah.
that is such a good point. The other thing that really spoke out to me was the fact that the people you surround yourself with. I think, for people our age, we really appreciate that more, especially in the space that we are in, because it's hard to meet younger people that are in the space that we're in, that are interested in
Yeah.
personal development and entrepreneurship, and coming from a space of giving value versus just school and debt and this and that. And it's
Yeah.
such a small bubble that we create for ourselves. So I really wanted to just take a moment and acknowledge those 2 points, because they're so important. And I think if people actually understand that and come from those two places of, firstly, one, coming from a place of value, and
Yeah.
two, uh, connecting with the right people and who you surround yourself. What's the quote? I think it's like something about, you are the sum of the five people
Yeah.
you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
It's so true. So I just
It
wanted to
really is.
really bring those points to light.
Yeah.
I
Is
appreciate
it cool
that.
if I comment on something in a sense here
Yeah,
too?
go for it.
Okay. Sick. So yeah, those 2 points are super true. And I think starting with the first point you made, so this is where I see a lot of young people, or just people in general, get messed up though, is, and I've been guilty of this myself, and I try not to be, and this comes with preparation and like being proactive about what you want to. So basically, so many times I see people, whether, if they hit me up or they hit another person up, and it's like, hey, first off, they just a lot of times ask for help, which, okay, first off, congrats to you for asking. That's awesome. But like, how can we make this even better? Because right now it's just taking. It's like, I want to help people, but I only have so much time, so I do have to be more strategic about who I help and how I help.
Yeah.
And so with a lot of the other people that people would be reaching out to, right? So, really what I'd say is, other times people take a step above that and they say, hey, I'd love to help you. Like, I also am looking to learn blank. It's like, okay, awesome. Now you're basically saying like, there's a way I can help, whatever, but that's a step above. That's still not where I think the sauce lies. The sauce lies where you basically take a step above that and you find the problem for a person or something specific that you can help that person with. And you basically say, hey, I would, I actually noticed that, your website is blah, blah, blah. You don't have blank or whatever. Or I noticed that, your Instagram account, like I did with this example of his name's Spencer X Smith, who I initially connected with. Well, if I do this example, Spencer, right? I had a very exact way I could help him, and I told him how, and I already had like practiced what I did and like know it worked. So it's like, and then some people get to that point, they're like, oh, there's nothing I can help with though. And stop making statements and start asking questions. Like, instead of there's nothing I can help someone with, ask yourself the question of either, what do I know that could benefit somebody right now? Or B, if you ask yourself that and really nothing happens, then it's B is, and I guess the better question is, what do I know that would be valuable to somebody else that I could help them with? But B is then, okay, well, how can I obtain the skills or knowledge of something that would be helpful to the person helped from? And what I want to do as well. So here's what I found is, there's typically like one or two things that you can like learn and get good at that you can almost apply to everyone you meet. But it changes over time because marketers ruin everything, right? Like how I used to grow on Instagram and like help, just like, Instagram's changed a lot and like the tactics still work, just not as well as they used to. And, it takes more effort and it's not as simple, but basically for me, that used to be what I would connect with everybody on. If I wanted to help, I would always lead with like, hey, because almost nobody knew it, but I knew it. So you have to find those things that's like, how can I help someone? And you can almost apply it to a lot of people you help with, even though it's more individual to them. Like you're like, I noticed on your account, you're not doing this and you can help with. And they're like, wow, they took the time personally for me, though it's almost the same for everybody, So, and you want to make it easy for them too. If it's like, okay, so I'm going to need, your WordPress login, and I'm going to need to have this meeting with this person and this meeting with that. It's like, okay, this seems like a headache and maybe I need it, but I'm just like, yeah, if you just give me the login or whatever, like, it's easier to help with that stuff. The last thing I'll say is on that is that, I want to help anyone out there who's like, oh, I also don't know like what or whatever. Like one thing I've helped a lot of people with is, since I just know the PR space super well, you see a lot of companies have, as seen on, and they might have like a Fox logo, NBC logo, ABC, etc.
Yeah.
A lot of times they get those logos by getting featured in sister companies of like, so for example, like fox36.com or whatever it may be, instead of like fox.com, but they can still legally use, the Fox logo. So it's like, but the way you can do that is if you actually know the space, there's a certain like press release you can run that, might cost $40, but it allows you to get in all these different publications, even though it's only temporary and it goes down after like, 2 to 4 months is typically the range. If it goes down after that, you can still legally use it since you were featured. And I mean, it depends on what you frame around that. But if you're just putting it on your website, like as seen on blank or in your bio or whatever, it still would legally work. So like you could, for $40, and literally I can send you this afterwards and you can share it with anyone that wants. Maybe there's an email of some like of who they reach out to get it. I don't know, but I can share you like an actual SOP. It's only like 10 minutes of how to do this. And for $40 now you can lead with.
No, I was just gonna say that I'm sure that a lot of our younger, kids and teens that are starting businesses, which I'll go into in a second, but that is such a good credibility piece, to have, to say, hey, what I do or my business or myself, I've been featured on such and such. Like I know personally how much those credibility, pieces for me have made a difference in how I show up with people. And it really is a kind of like, oh, you were on this, article or this TV station or whatever it is. And people get more intrigued. They're like, oh, you were in media? Tell me more. And so it's such a good way to position yourself. So I definitely would love to share that.
Yeah, no, I'll get you the Loom recording of that because it shows them how they can just do it themselves for like a really like, instead of, because if we're doing this for our client and we're very transparent about everything, but it's going to be like $1,200 just because we're going to have to go write the article. We're going to need to make sure everything's good. And then it's usually part of another bigger package. But I want to show people like, if you're willing to write your own article, put in the work, like you can get this done for a lot less and you do it for yourself. Like Shivanii said, you can get that credibility. But for yourself, and then now you also approach it like, hey, this is what I've done. Literally, I can do this for you. It's not going to take you any of your time or whatever. I'll like, write the article, or you could pay someone to write the article or whatever. I just need to talk with you about 30 minutes to interview to make sure I know what to write about. And then I'll also send you the logos that you can put on your website to have the as seen on, especially if it's like an e-commerce brand, like that's been shown to help with conversions and different things of the sort. But it's just like such a simple way to lead for value when people might typically charge thousands an hour for their consulting, to get in front of them for, $40 while still leading with value. And they're going to be really happy to help if you're younger and approaching things in that way a lot of times. So.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. Okay. So I have a question for you. If what would you tell kids and teens that want to start a business? They haven't started anything yet and they want to start a business. What would you say your first 3 steps would be for kids and teens?
Oh gosh. So it's probably going to be different than what you would think. I mean, okay, if we want, I can give 2 answers if you want. I can give what I would do if I were to go back and like I had to start from square one, knowing everything I know now, versus if I decided I want to start a business, because I actually wouldn't start a business, is kind of like my answer. Yeah. Knowing what I know now, because it's like, took me so long to even make profit. Even at this point, like we're not insanely profitable. Like I'm still reinvesting. I'm still, like
Mm.
something happens and I need to cover up for, like something like, oh my gosh, I didn't expect this to happen. And now this is going to fulfillment wise cost way more than I thought for these clients. And that's eating up this profit. And, so basically what I would do, this is me personally, is I would get a job in high ticket sales where I could basically take calls via Zoom. Maybe you set your own appointments. Ideally, you have appointments set for you, even though if you're brand new, it's not likely that you're going to get that. So I would show people I'm ambitious. I'm super ambitious. And I would get a job in high ticket sales and I would get really good at that skill of selling. And this is for two reasons. Reason number one, I'm getting paid to learn now. I'm literally getting paid to learn. And because I literally had to pay for my own education with, my business, I paid for my own mistakes and I can start observing and seeing how they do things and asking questions. And, but mainly I'm getting paid to learn a skill that later I can then stack on with other things to run my own business. So it's more of like, instead of starting right off the bat, and like, don't get me wrong. If you start your own business, it's not going to hurt you if you're young, as long as you and your family are in a financial situation where you cannot to make money for a while. Because if you just look at the statistics, like don't take my word for it, most like 95% of businesses fail within 5 years, right? And it's like, there's a reason for that. It's not easy. You have to think very differently and act differently. And it's super fun and super fulfilling when you do it, but it's like, you can work harder or you could work smarter. I would have worked smarter in the beginning and taken like a step backwards to take 3 forwards instead of trying to go forward like right away. And it doesn't even need to be high ticket sales. Like maybe you're like, man, I would hate sales. First off, I encourage you to look into things, because I thought again in high school that, I might want to grow up and be a therapist and for different reasons, but I got into business because I wanted money. And then I found out I really loved it. Like I didn't even know, I thought I would want to do anything but business for my career. And it's like, I really found that I loved it and I wouldn't have known unless I tried it, because I thought that I wouldn't like it. And then I actually did it. I'm like, oh dang, like I really do like this.
Yeah.
For multiple reasons. But so my point is like, first off, try it if you think you might not like it or whatever. Get uncomfortable. You got to get uncomfortable to make progress. And really, it's
I want you to go a
that's
little
what I
bit
would have done.
deeper. I want you to go a little bit deeper into get uncomfortable, because it's something that I know personally you stand by. You embody that, and it's so awesome because that's how you grow. And yeah, just go a little bit deeper into that because I love that so much. Where did that
For
come from?
sure. Okay. First off, appreciate it. Second off, where did it come from? That's a really good question. Where did it come from? Huh. I think first off, it was sometime in high school, just like amongst personal development. Again, with environment, what people don't tell you, everyone thinks of environments as where do I live? Who do I talk with on like a face-to-face level? Your environment this is such a blessing with the internet, is so like you can have your digital environment. If your physical environment and you're young isn't good, or even if you're older, it isn't good, you can put in, like your AirPods or your headphones or whatever, and listen to a podcast and get like, I would basically, when I was driving into Madison after I got those clients in Madison, my senior year of high school, I would drive and I would listen on there on the way back to Gary Vaynerchuk's podcast, which is like, he's
Yeah.
so stereotypical, but like literally that helped me so much with like just learning like certain principles. And there's things I agree and disagree with that, were said on that, like in retrospect, but like a lot of it I actually agree with. And I think and it really helped shape my mindset. And through that, and just kind of like that personal development journey, because then you start following other entrepreneurs on Instagram and this and that. And some of them, are full of BS and some of them are really give great advice. But I just started to like learn, and I started to be able to, once I test this stuff, like who I actually agree with and don't. And I still am going through this process, but I can't remember exactly. I do know there's this one YouTube channel I like called Yes Theory. And
Yeah.
like, I think like their phrase, like seek discomfort or something of the sort like that. And
Mm.
I did like that too, though that's not where I got it from. I'm trying to, either way, kind of relevant where I got it from, though it was from somewhere in that journey. I just kind of was like, you just got to get uncomfortable. I think, I don't know if it was original. I don't think it was, unfortunately, but
I mean,
it's
I
definitely
think
not.
that in the personal development space, that kind of mindset of getting uncomfortable, stepping outside of your comfort zone, doing things that are outside of your norm. It's all kind of part of it in the
Yeah.
large scale of things.
Exactly. Yeah.
But not many people embody it, and not many people our age embody it. So
Oh, for sure.
I
Yeah.
think that's like a really big thing, that if you're a kid or teen that wants to make a difference in what they're doing in life, and do something outside of the box, outside of the norm, start there. Start doing things that you wouldn't do. And
Yeah.
start, like, even it could be as small as, creating a new habit for yourself that is better
Yes.
than what other people are doing, or getting on the karaoke mic when no one else
Yeah.
will. Like, anything that can step you
Literally though.
outside of the norm of what you normally do, because by doing that you grow, and when you grow you make decisions and choices
Yeah.
that are probably more aligned to where you want to go. So
Yeah.
agree, so
Yeah.
much agree.
So
Yeah.
really, to elaborate on that more, and I just grabbed something that I'll explain in a second here, but so many people go through their lives, and this is not original to me, by the way. I heard this somewhere, don't remember where, but so many people go through their lives being thermometers. Right? Basically, it's like, what's the vibe? Let me like match the vibe or whatever. And it's like they go through and nobody's getting uncomfortable. Everyone's trying to look good for people that don't really care about them and they don't really care about. And they're literally living their lives for these people. And they're matching that energy on how everyone else is living, like, oh, this is how I should do it. Like, oh yeah, I should really dress this way because I don't want to get made fun of by this person that doesn't really care about me and I don't really care about them, or whatever it is. And then and that's just one example, but basically everyone walks around basically being thermometers. And really you have to be the thermostat in your group of people and turn up the energy, up the basically the discomfort. You have to be willing to be the person who moves first and leads, because, and I'm not saying you have to bring up your friend group with you. Like, actually you're gonna end up very frankly leaving a lot of those people behind, not because you don't like them or appreciate them, or not because they're not good people, but just because a lot of times they won't grow with you. And when there becomes too much separation from like your values and like where you're going and where other people are, two things will happen. Either you'll go back to that, they'll come to you, or the other one is you just got to let them go. It just is like, you have to be able to create space for yourself to continue to grow, because you can't be in an environment where there's like not enough growth happening other places. Like, you'll get pulled down. You will, like, it's impossible to keep progressing. You need to put yourself in environments that level yourself up, and you can be with the same people as long as they're leveling up too. That's the thing, as long as there's mutual value and goal alignment with that. But basically, getting uncomfortable, the way I look at it is, if you want to live a more comfortable life in the long term, you have to be willing to live a uncomfortable life in the short term. And you have to be, this phrase is definitely not mine, but you have to be willing to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's one thing. So one of my mentors, Brett Knudsen, and literally the reason I grabbed this gavel and basically like cameras, this used to be, so when I was in college, I had like a few people I worked with who actually went to the same college as me. And we would have like meetings, and I bought this gavel because I thought it would be sick to like, during the meetings, or it was just kind of a fun thing. But on the gavel itself, it says, you can't have a life that everybody wants without being willing to make sacrifices that everyone else isn't willing to make. And Brett is really the person who told me this. And in a sense, he told me that if you want a life that 99% of people don't have and want, you have to be willing to do what 99% of people aren't willing to do, which is the same exact thing said a different way. And that is getting uncomfortable. You have to get so uncomfortable, and you have to almost like love getting uncomfortable eventually and fall in love with that process. And it's something I've actually started to fall in love with. And it's so fun when you do it. It's so freeing, and you really start to unlock your potential, but it does take time. I even remember like, interviewing people in Madison, just walking up to them randomly and asking them what their passion is while I'm being filmed. I remember literally almost like throwing up before doing that, because I was so nervous of what, like, there's no actual fear there, but my point is, you have to get uncomfortable with trying new things, but also like sometimes I deliberately put myself in uncomfortable situations just to practice the skill of getting uncomfortable. Yeah, of course, do it and use discernment. Like if there's some drug that isn't good, like cocaine or something, don't go and try cocaine just because it's uncomfortable. Like with what you're doing. But that's my only caveat to it. But otherwise, like, yeah, discomfort, being uncomfortable.
I think that that's a good distinction to make, though. It's like, get uncomfortable in the ways that will help you grow. Not uncomfortable exactly. In the way that's gonna deter you from that path, right? Because you can.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
All I was gonna say is, so many people though, they'll lie to themselves and they'll say like, oh, I'm not gonna do like karaoke tonight, like with my friends, because that's not gonna help me grow. Like that's a waste of my time. But in reality, the reason why they're doing that is because deep down they know, like, I'm uncomfortable singing in front of people and like dancing or whatever. And it's like, they'll lie to themselves and they'll justify their real emotional reason with a more logical one. So it's just important to use actual discernment and not make decisions that are convenient for you, but make decisions that are the truth and actually benefiting you, like you're basically saying here.
Oh, that is a good distinction. That is a great way to phrase it, because it's so true. We talk ourselves out of doing stuff all the time, right? We're like, oh, it's just not my, like, it's okay, you guys, I'm here as support, using karaoke as an example. So many times, like, people be like, oh no, I'm just like here to support you guys. Like, that's where I'm at. And that's fine. But is that allowing you to grow? Are you getting uncomfortable? What's the worst that could happen? The worst thing that could possibly happen is that maybe you fall on the stage or mess up a lyric. Everyone messes up a lyric in karaoke. It's karaoke, right? But I love coming from the space of asking yourself, firstly, what can I do to get uncomfortable? And secondly, what's the worst that could happen if I get uncomfortable?
Exactly. And the funny thing is, okay, two things on that. Thing number one, if you're out there having a good time, even if you fall or whatever, if you're being the thermostat, and this does go to like who you're going with, but it's funny, like, you can go with people that aren't used to dancing or singing. And if you're the thermostat and you're like, taking initiative and like whatever, you're going to inspire more people to do the same. And it's like, or at least worst case scenario. So it's kind of funny. You asked the question of what's the worst that happens. It's like, yeah, you fall, you might get embarrassed, like you're made fun of or whatever. But I think really the worst case is you don't do that and you continue living, in a way, like you don't go and you continue living in a way where you're A, not benefiting your self-growth, and then B, it's like you're hiding from your potential, and you're also hiding from I don't want to be on my deathbed when I'm old, look back at life and be like, man, I was too afraid to sing at karaoke. I was too afraid to start this. I was too afraid to tell this person that, or whatever it is. It's like, and that actually is a decision-making process I use sometimes when I think about stuff, is I'm like, if I were on my deathbed, like looking back at this, like I don't want to live a life where I'm like, well, what if I tried this? Or what if I actually applied myself here? Or what if like I wasn't afraid to play all out? And of course, you can't do everything. You have to use real discernment, not with what's convenient to you, but what's actually best for you, on how to make these decisions on what you should and shouldn't focus on. But yeah, that's just one other thing. It's like, don't live a life where you look back on your deathbed and you didn't like participate in karaoke or do this or do that just because you were too uncomfortable of how other people would perceive you, that typically don't care about you and you don't care about them a whole lot, right? And when I say care about, I mean like on a genuine, like deeper level. But it all depends on who you're with and stuff too. But you get my point.
Yeah. I think as you were saying, a thought popped in my head. It's like, okay, I use the phrase, what's the worst that could happen? But more so, what's the best that could happen?
Yeah.
Because
that's so. Can I give a story about this? So, okay, discomfort and the best you can happen versus worst you can happen. All right. So, I was very fortunate to be raised in an upper middle class family, and I'm aware of how that's benefited me. Like, for example, when I was testing myself business wise, in school, I didn't need to like help my family like be supported. Like, I know some of my friends actually like, had to work and even pitch in for like, certain things to help support, but I just needed to I didn't need to do that basically. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity that gave me. And I also understand how that shapes experiences and things of the sort and everyone else. But again, don't use stuff as an excuse though, because I know so many people that had so much worse than me that are so much more successful than I am in a lot of different areas. I'm talking about financially, but like, I mean, there also, the reason why I'm like more hesitant around like spiritually, emotionally, and like things that sort of like that is because I do live a very fulfilled life. And I don't really like think about comparing like who's more fulfilled or whatever, robs everyone of fulfillment and joy. But basically, my point is focus on what you can control. You can have results or excuses, but not both. So a lot of times our reasons are excuses dressed up in fancy suits. Just like, don't give yourself BS reasons or excuses. Just like, what can you control? What do you want out of life? And how can you take action on that? Because nobody else is going to. So, okay, but back to the main point of the story is I went on this cruise when I graduated high school in the summer for 7 days. And I my whole life in high school dances, nobody actually like danced, And I wanted to actually like dance. I was like, man, I wonder like what it would be like if I were to like actually like, because I did want to be a good dancer. Like if I had a choice to be a good dancer or not dance and be a bad dancer, then I would choose to be the good dancer. And I was like, okay, so I am going to get uncomfortable, make a commitment to myself on this cruise that I'm here for 7 days. Worst case scenario is everyone hates me. Again, I'm worst case scenario in the short term is everyone hates me and like thinks I'm weird. And then I never see them again, like after 7 days, more likely than not. But best case scenario is I have a really great time and I really unlock, like I get uncomfortable, I practice that skill and I unlock like a new, like, I guess skills or like whatever, like dancing, like, ability that I never had before. And so the first day I got in my head and I basically didn't really do anything. I danced like a little bit, but still like pretty reserved. And then the second day of the cruise, there was something, this is such a funny story. So there's a competition called Mr. Sexy Legs that they have on this cruise ship. And it's basically just like, it's just kind of like a funny thing where dudes will give like these 3 female judges who are also cruise like basically like attendants or not attendants, like guests, they're guests on the cruise as well. They'll basically like dance for them. And they get like ranked, judged by them in the crowd and things of the sort. And it's like the boat had 6,000 people on it total. I think a little shy of 6,000, but there was about at least 2,000 people watching on this event because it's pretty funny. And it's like on like the main like pool deck or whatever. And there's a lot of scene it. And they ask volunteers for the dudes, to go up, and there's 12 contestants. Or I think there might be like between 12 and 15 normally. I know that there's 12 when I did it. But my point is so let's say there's a ship of 6,000 people. Out of that 6,000, let's say half of them are guys, that's 3,000. And then out of that 3,000, only 12 end up volunteering, right?
Wow.
So it's but here's what I'm saying if you want to live a life that 99% of people want, you have to be willing to do what 99% of people aren't willing to do. So I told myself, I'm like, this is like either, like if you mess up and like look weird, like this is in front of like a lot of people who are watching. So it's like, cruise might not be but I was like, I just got to get uncomfortable. Like I can't just talk about this value and live it. Like when it's uncomfortable enough to like whatever, I'm like, I got to get really uncomfortable. I'm going to do it. Right. And so my brother actually did it as well too. So we both basically signed up for this. And when I say signed up, all you had to do is walk up there when they said like whatever. And but again, it wasn't like a flood of people and they had to turn people away. Like there were only 12 people that even went up and all of them got to do it. So I don't know even what the max is. I'd probably guess 15 because but either way. So went up there, I'm getting ready. I was contestant number 6. There was a guy even before me that like left because he's like, wait, this is what it is. He's like, I thought this was different because he like saw like how everyone was dancing. and so he left and like, so I really was number 5, but basically, I like went and I just was like, man, I'm just going to like give this my all. And if it goes great, it's going to go great, but it's going to go either really great or really bad, most likely one of the two. And it actually just ended up being like really funny. And a lot of people afterwards were like, man, like that was hilarious. And they approached me. So like I called myself like White Thunder when they asked me what my name was, because I was like, I just gotta say something funny, right? So they're like, hey, give it up for contestant number 6. What's your name, contestant number 6, or whatever. I'm like, I'm White Thunder. So then like the rest of the cruise basically, people were like, just like, oh, what's up, White Thunder, or whatever, just like that I saw normally after that. But my point of this is that I got uncomfortable. I was just like, how can I be funny? How can I do like whatever, and just go like have fun. And it made the rest of the cruise so much more fun. But it's not just about that. That's the short-term consequence. The long-term consequence was that I got uncomfortable, and now I can actually, like, I'm not some amazing like super skilled dancer, but I can actually dance and have fun when I go places. And I would definitely consider myself to be like a thermostat in those environments, where a lot of
I can definitely agree that you are a thermostat, 100%.
And I really appreciate it. And it's just like, but my point is on this, the bigger point is that I was so uncomfortable on that cruise, like basically doing that. And there's plenty of things, but now I get to benefit for that the rest of my life. And I would have spent time thinking, well, what if I just did that, right? And I wouldn't have even known the biggest consequence if I was on my deathbed thinking of, what if I entered Mr. Sexy Legs when I graduated? Like, but it's like, I wouldn't have even known how big of a difference it would have made in my life. And it made such a big difference. It's not like this was something where it's like, like, I don't know. It's not like it's, I went from being depressed to not being depressed or something like that, but it just made my life marginally better, because now I have the confidence that, like, if I'm in somewhere where people are dancing, I can actually participate, have a good time, and even elevate that environment. So it's like, yeah, that's just an example of a story like actually implemented. I really want to share of your thing of, well, what if it went good, right? The what if, like the positive instead of just the negative. And the positive is like, it literally has changed my life.
Like that one simple, ridiculous moment
yes, that
has changed the way.
Was less than.
Yeah. I mean, what? You probably were on stage for
like 3 minutes,
3 minutes.
like 3 to 5 minutes.
3 minutes now you look back on and you're like, not only did I have an amazing time, yes, I got uncomfortable, but now every time I do anything else, I can look back on that moment and be like, it allowed me to be able to get uncomfortable, to do something different, to be more confident, to dance when I want to dance, and not really worry about it, because I think that's such an firstly hilarious story, but also from the place of just recognizing that, hey, if I do this, it will probably, I know what's gonna happen in the worst case and the best case, and not doing it is gonna be more detrimental than doing it. And that you were aware of that whole process.
Yes, because a lot of times you don't even know what the best case scenario is. Like, not every scenario is going to be something that makes like your life change, but like I did not think that was going to be like this big life altering like moment of like, wow, I actually feel confident now. Any scenario in my life, and think about all the scenarios. It's a wedding, it's someone's going out with your friend, it's whatever it is, that like where it's actually like you have so much more fun if you don't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to dance, and like what am I gonna, like, is there gonna be an area for me to just sit like with a drink and like chill, or like, you don't have to think about that stuff. You can actually just like be, instead of having to like be on the defense. You can just live and actually be. And yeah, so really it just is like, a lot of times the biggest negative you can think out in your mind, but the biggest positive you like can predict, but you can't even really know what that is, which is like the cool part about getting uncomfortable too, and why it should be a value that I think a lot of more young people should adapt and like live, because it really just makes your life so much significantly better in the long term too. Because just like money, how you can have compound interest, skill compounds over time too, and getting uncomfortable and the skills you develop from all the things you're getting uncomfortable from compound over time, and it really will affect your life in a positive manner in the short term, but also in the long term when compound interest really kicks in more.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. There's something that I'd love for you to share a little bit about. And I know you're kind of a fanatic around biohacking and, tracking your sleep and all that kind of stuff. And so I know that if kids, like, I know personally that if kids, teens, even adults, who are we kidding, implemented some of these good habits around you know, there's all sorts of different habits that I would hope people would implement in their life. But
Yeah.
stuff around biohacking is just such an interesting thing, because I feel like if kids started doing that kind of stuff early on,
Yeah.
firstly, they'd be more healthy. They would probably do better
Yeah.
in, you know, whatever they're doing, whether it's school, whether it's working, whether it's starting a lemonade stand. Like, it just, the cognitive functions increase dramatically. And I'll let you can like share a little bit about your kind of experience with that, just because I know that you're such a fanatic and I know it could add some value to some
Yeah.
people out there.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And I actually really appreciate you asking that because yeah, I know before we even started recording this, we're like, yeah, let's just help people in whatever way we can, pretty much. And it's like this is I feel really passionate about this because few different things. Look at your life, okay? And when you look at your life, you look at from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, think about the things that you do. And what do every single thing that you do, what does that involve? And it involves energy. It involves you expending energy. So then the question is kind of like, okay, well, two questions is like, where is my energy levels currently at? A, and then B, how do you best get like the optimal level of energy in your body?
Mm.
And because literally everything you do from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, you're just literally energy, and throughout the whole day you're spending energy, right? So we get energy through multiple ways. I could kind of break it down into like, from what we do, what we eat, and how we sleep a lot of times. And even more so how we believe, which is kind of what I mean by what we do. Because like you've probably have tasks that you feel more jubilant afterwards compared to a task that you do and you feel very like lethargic afterwards, or maybe drained, or whatever word you want to use. So my point is, one of the biggest things that affects everything in your life is your energy, and one of the biggest things that affects energy is your sleep. So for so many years of my life, I got such terrible sleep. And I know it's so terrible. You know that humans are the only mammals that will consistently sleep deprive themselves. There's no other mammal, any animal you look at. But and it's funny because know how we store fat when we eat too much food? Like we store fat, and the reason for that is because from a survival standpoint, we're basically saving the food that we don't need in case we get hungry and need it later. If we're starving or whatever, we have like almost like a bank for times of famine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is there's not something like that with sleep. There's not like, oh, if I get really good sleep, I can afford not to get good sleep. Not there. And by the way, I'm still working on my own sleep even, and like especially when I travel, it typically gets really messed up. Really, sleep though, it's like it's so important because there's not such a thing as catching up on sleep. Like you can actually get better energy back, but you actually can't. Either way, this is the science. Let me get into the actual like reasons of how I do what I do and why I do what I do and what it's done for me when it comes to sleep. So starting with what it's done for me, I went from somebody who literally like would just struggle to get stuff done, especially stuff I knew I should be doing. And even if I planned it out, to actually go and do it because I was so tired. Like I would get to these things after school, after already being sleep deprived through school, still needing to do homework, and then like have stuff business wise I wanted to work on. It was so much easier to choose not to work on the hard thing that I knew would really move the needle in my business, and instead choose to work on something else that would make me feel better, but like was easier for me mentally to do. And it's because my energy was so terrible. And really, I hired a performance coach who's worked with a lot of like really successful entrepreneurs. And he helped me really optimize a few areas of my life, including sleep. And what he did for me was basically, it's nothing groundbreaking. I'm literally like sharing the 80-20 of everything right here, right now. The main thing is I knew I needed to invest like a good chunk of money in order to actually implement it, because I knew otherwise I probably wouldn't be like accountable to it. That's just how I was at that point in my life with that type of thing. So it was worth the investment for me. And the dude's a great guy. I would recommend him to anybody who's looking for something like that. But basically, though, I started basically asking myself, okay, when do I need to wake up each day? Let's start there. When do I need to get up? For me, I have a team meeting at 9. I have no morning routine. Actually, I personally, I'm a big fan of like testing things and figuring out what actually works for you. For me, morning routines aren't important for me at all. Like I actually don't really like the mornings. And I wake up and I like having the meeting right away because it forces me to get out of bed, brush my teeth. I don't eat breakfast, which I intermittent fast, which is kind of part of the biohacking thing, but we don't need to get into that right now. That's a bit in the weeds. What's more important is actually the sleep. So I don't need to eat breakfast, which also saves me time. So I basically just brush my teeth, get dressed, get on my team call first thing in the morning. But really though, so I'm like, okay, I need to wake up at 8:45. Okay. And now I set my sleep goal, which is I want to be asleep for 8 hours. And some people say, oh, I only need 7 or I really encourage you to start at 8. Like, and then worst case scenario, your body just tells you different as time goes on. But so many people actually need 8 more than they think. And I say start at 8 hours. And here's another misconception people get. People say, yeah, I typically get like 7 to 6 hours of sleep a night. And they really don't. So I track my sleep every single night with a ring called Aura Ring. And it shows me when I'm awake and when I'm asleep. And the funny thing is most people think that they just like go to bed and then they wake up. They don't understand they actually wake up multiple times throughout the night, but you just don't remember it because you're still in such a dreamy state that your consciousness is like this weird blended reality. And then you just end up falling back asleep really quickly. But what happens to your sleep cycles is you go out of sleep and now you have to get back into sleep, into your sleep cycles. And sleep isn't just about how long you're in bed. It's about the quality of it too. Because you need to be hitting your REM stages of sleep, which is the dream stages. And that's what really regenerates, like, and makes you like mentally sharp. And other sleep has different parts of it. But I was like, okay, if I want to get 8 hours of actual sleep, I need to be physically in bed for 9 hours. Because I know I'm going to wake up and I know it takes me a little bit to get to bed and whatever. And this is actually a really consistent trend because other members of our team also have Aura rings. And, you know, I see their stats and like I can see the data from this. And it's typically like, if you want to get 8 hours of sleep, you got to be in bed for 9. So then it's like, okay, well, what is 9 hours away from 8:45 in the morning, which is 11:45 at night, you know? So I'm like, okay, let me have my goal to be to get in bed by 11:30. Because I know if I'm in bed by 11:30, then, you know, even if I miss that a bit, I'll probably still be in bed by 11:45. So then what I did is I'm a big fan of changing your environment to support your goals. So I'm like, okay, let me, basically set an alarm that reoccurs on my phone every single day at 10 p.m. to remind me to start winding down what I'm doing and write out my day for the next day. Cause that's another huge thing that's helped me so much. I used to be like, no, I'm such a creative thinker. Like I can't write out my days. When I write out everything I have to do and then I prioritize it and then like can schedule out what I'm going to do the next day, it allows me just to focus on doing instead of always thinking about like, oh, well, what if blah, 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 or this or that or whatever. I could just do instead of being worried about like think, oh, is this the best thing to worry about? Or just choosing the easy things to worry about that are way easier to do and don't actually move the needle as much as some of the harder things that I should be doing. So it allows you to make those decisions. And so I basically will write out my day. And then I'll start getting ready for bed. And, you know, I do typically have a little personal time where I might respond to texts or things of the sort. Then I'll be, you know, shower, get in bed by, you know, 11:30, 11:45. And literally, if you try this, you're going to need at least 3 days of consistent sleep to start seeing the results first and foremost. Yeah, it's changed my life so much because now that I have good sleep, I'm literally so much better at work. I approach like, it's funny. I'm not like afraid and hate doing these like harder mental things that I actually like doing, but they just seem like so much. It's still not easy, but it's so much easier. And it just is like, why work from a disadvantage when you could work from an advantage in your life? Yeah. And some people might say, oh, well, I just don't have the time, whatever, blah, blah, blah. What I actually found is that when I started sleeping properly, I got more done in less time. And literally it almost like balanced out. So not only am I getting more done, I feel better when I'm doing it. It's way more sustainable. But it actually really takes the same amount of time, even though some people would argue otherwise. But I'm just telling you, this is my experience and what I've seen with others as well. The other really important thing about it is it's so important for your health. A person with their health has 1,000 wishes, which is probably somebody who's listening to this podcast. But I promise you that if your health gets taken away from you, you're not going to care about scaling your business to, you know, another, you know, $500,000 in the next quarter or whatever it may be, or, you know, starting a new bit. You're going to care about getting healthy. And so many people are reactive when they should be proactive about those things.
Especially entrepreneurs or people in business.
Yes.
Most people, this is actually a conversation that's come up a few times now, in this past week for me, is that a lot of entrepreneurs, unfortunately, they are so busy hustling and doing things and working on projects and doing all this stuff, and then they get to a point years down the line where they look back and they get, some news about their health or something happens, and they're like, oh, I need to take care of this. And this has happened personally with with my dad. Like, he was this person that was super in his work, would work crazy, ridiculous hours, put in the time, effort, all that kind of stuff. And recently he got some news that, not massive news, but enough to the point where he's like, I need to prioritize my health. And by doing that, he actually realized that by prioritizing his health, he's getting more done. He's more focused. He's actually, making progress in ways that he would have taken him longer to do beforehand. So just by seeing someone who's done it the opposite way, I am 100% positive that if you start implementing the things that you've talked about, making sure you have proper sleep, eating the right foods that are nutritious for your body, doing the fasting is amazing. Obviously, for certain people, it's different and all that kind of stuff.
You got to adjust your diet accordingly.
Adjust to what your body needs, especially if you're a kid or teen. We're not saying like go intermittent fast, but we are saying do the things.
I eat big dinners.
Like do the things that are gonna help you excel on a physical level, because by doing it on a physical level, it's going to impact all the other things that you do in your life, whether it's the habits that you have, whether it's the learning abilities, like all that kind of stuff will be affected. So I definitely agree.
That's amazing. So a few things on that is, thing number one, it's like, so many people, and I actually noticed this with myself, and I did a few things about it, and this is kind of what I want to share. And the reason why I want to share this is not to show you guys exactly what I did, but the thought process around it. So like, basically, you guys have probably seen, if you're watching the video, I like crack my neck a lot, I stretch a lot, whatever. I would just work so much inside a computer, so much that even being, this young, I my right hand was my mouse hand, and it would always be up like on my computer, like kind of like, here, just like working or whatever. And I started to get like this like huge pain, so I was not in my trap, and I'd always be like, oh, whatever. Just kind of let it slowly get worse and worse, which was until the point where it actually was just like sharp. And like I would turn my head, and I went to this event in Dallas, and I just remember after the event, after like standing all day, and like it was just bad. I was like, I got to do something about this. So a few things are, I first and foremost like bought one of those massage ball things and like just absolutely abused it for like multiple like days. Still do it to stay proactive now, because it's still actually not great, but it's a lot better than what it used to be. And now I'm being more proactive about things. And then this is part of this, and just in exercise in general, I was like, I'm just not like getting enough cardio for it. Like I should be lifting more too, but I'm like, I should also be getting more cardio just for my heart and for my body. So I'm like, how could I do this or whatever? So I have a standing desk, which also helps me with this hair, and my be elevated, so I don't have to like bend over. Like I have, wireless, keyboard and mouse pad, and I have above that is my computer. And then I can choose to stand when I want, because I have a standing desk. And the reason why it's elevated is so I don't have to bend over as much, because that like also would hurt it more. And then the other thing is, now I have a treadmill that when I hit my standing desk, I can put underneath. And when I'm on a call, I primarily do this when I'm on calls with like my team or someone else, where it's not like my first time meeting them or something of the sort like that. I'll walk and talk if I don't need to like be super like analytical and whatever it is. Or sometimes even if I'm doing something, I'll walk just at like 2 miles an hour, or like 1.5 miles an hour, just to slow, so I'm not moving too much or whatever. But literally, it's like one of the healthiest things you can do for your heart is just walk 30 minutes a day. So it's like, so many entrepreneurs will make these excuses if I don't have time. Well, how about you just work smarter and you get a standing desk and put a treadmill underneath it? And it's a treadmill that's really move too. They have treadmills for these types of things. So
and here's the thing about the whole like, oh, I don't have enough time. If you really wanted to make time for something, you would, right? And if your health is important to you, and making sure that you can continue the work that you're probably doing at the point that you're not choosing to, prioritize your health,
Yeah.
that's gonna come and, bite you in the ass later. Like, it's those kind of things that's important to think about as you're starting your journey, is especially like if you're a kid or teen listening, prioritize not just one aspect of your life. It's very easy to do that. You get stuck in just school, you get stuck in just creating a business, you get stuck in, it's about looking at your life as a whole and making sure that you're doing the things that you need to do so that you have a fulfilled life as a whole. And I
Yeah.
think so many people forget to do that. And so taking care of your health and, tracking your sleep and eating the right foods and doing the things that will push you towards not only living a longer life, but also will help you so that you can actually keep doing the business that you want to do, keep growing the friendships that you have. It really fulfills in all areas of life, not just in, for example, work. So
No,
super
super
important.
true. Super true. And so yeah, I was just thinking about this too, because I'm like, okay, from the perspective, I'm like, how would I be interpreting everything as I listen to things? And it all depends on where someone's at in their journey. But
Yeah.
if it's cool with you, I know earlier you asked the question of like, what would I do if I were to start my business again? I answered like get a job. And I'm thinking like, what if somebody is like, oh, I can't get a job because, I'm at school for half like the working hours or whatever, or and the thing is, first off, there's always workarounds and like, there's jobs with flexible hours and you can set appointments during school and take the appointments after. Like I took all my sales calls after school when I first started. But the last thing I'll say is if it's cool with you, I even rewind that and give what I think would be my advice if I were to start business again from point one, because I could give like tactics, but the thing is this: I give a tactic now, it might not work next month.
Yeah.
It might not work next week, or it might not work nearly as well. It's probably, does it work or doesn't it work? It's not a question of that. It's how well does or doesn't it work, right?
Yeah.
But if I were to rewind and basically answer that question too, I would say like I would start a podcast, which is very inexpensive to do. And also this is a resource I have that I'll give to you that you can share with anyone. If you're like, well, I don't know how to start, again, stop making statements, start asking questions. How can I learn how to start? Who knows how to start that could help me? How can I help them because they're helping me? Even though we're not trying to exchange here, like, oh, I need to do this because they're doing this. It's just leading with value and starting things off on a right foot. But basically, I'll give you this free podcasting guide on like how to, and this is actually, we used to do podcast consulting. We charge like $4,000 to $5,000 to do like a full like podcast consultant launch with somebody. And then I was like, let me just put this into a messy Google Doc. Cause like we just grew at the point of where like it didn't make sense to focus on that. And because it took up a lot of my time. And it was kind of like one-off stuff, and press just made a lot more sense, but I still knew it could really benefit people. A lot of people could use it. So now we just give it away for free when it's applicable to people that could benefit from it. But basically I would start a podcast and I would ask myself the question of, okay, first off, what do I want to do? I don't know. Okay, let me try random stuff, but then who has done things that I find cool or that I respect? Or if I know what I want to do, who's currently doing what I want to be doing? And not just like, oh, this person has a successful business, but they're also fulfilled, emotionally, spiritually, as well as financially, right? And, ideally, physically too. But basically, who are these people? And then once you find them, it's basically a matter of how can I get in touch, build a relationship, and learn from this person, right? And that's what podcasting allows you to do. Is you start a podcast, you interview, and by the way, we have on this doc there's 2 videos. You just want to watch the 2 videos to go over like 80% of the information. It includes how to reach out to these people in ways that I've never actually seen like publicly shared. It's how I booked, and this is stuff I've done to book this is how I got, my mentors of Brett and Jeff. Are literally from exactly what I'm sharing here. You just gotta, and you of course innovate on the principles that are shared in there too. If you have a better way to do things or a way to outreach you want to test, do it. But really though, I would ask myself who has that information and I'd surround myself with them, right? I'd build that relationship. I'd help them out. I'd lead with value. And I'd figure out a way to help them out if I didn't know how. And I'd learn from them, because you're going to shortcut your learning curve so much more by learning from people who have already done something, than you are from trying to figure it out on yourself, or, refusing to ask for help because your ego feels like it's whatever, like, and you want to ask for in the right way, like we talked about. But that, and then also I've, just invested a lot into coaching programs and, educational programs, honestly, probably similar to this as well, right? That have really helped me shortcut my learning curve and progress amongst what I'm doing. But so, you just gotta make sure you're investing in the right things and in the right people. And so you got to find a way to get yourself in the right environment. And it can be digitally. Again, I didn't even meet Brett, who's been a mentor of mine for over 3 years, in person until, when I was in Vegas like 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, or whatever it was. So that was my first time meeting him in person. But we built such a relationship just over digital proximity before that. So you have the gift of digital proximity. If you're listening to this right now, everything that we talked about, like, you can do. So yeah. That's what I would do, is I would basically start that podcast, find the people, and learn from them.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Something that I've been really fortunate to have in my life is that my family always surrounded both my sister and I with people and experts in their respective fields. So if I wanted to learn about sales, I had, some a family friend that I could go and ask. And
Yeah.
if someone else learned about or was an expert in, health and or like meditation, like I could go and ask them,
Yeah.
right? And this is kind of a next step beyond just the people because I assure you, there's probably people in your life that know about things that you can go pick their brains on.
Yeah.
And so take advantage of that, firstly, and secondly, with the people that you want to be surrounded with, the people that you want to learn from, coming at it from that angle is amazing. People love to share about themselves and the knowledge and the things that they're passionate about. So if you
Yeah.
ask people questions, almost, 99% of the time, they're probably are going to want to answer, unless they're like some super celebrity that's really hard to get in touch with. But, it's still possible. But again, just like asking those questions, having people come onto a podcast or an interview, and positioning it in a way that's like, hey, I'm, such and such person. I'm learning about all these different things, and I'd really love to pick your brain on this specific thing. You're an expert, and I'd love to share about you because you're so inspiring. You're this, you're that. I mean, like, it's very similar with the way that like I reached out to you, and I've reached out to a lot of other people that, I feel like could add value to not only my community, but I'd love to share, this person with my community just because it adds value all the way around, right? So I love that positioning, and I highly recommend that as well. If you're starting off and you want to, learn and take a next step, even if
Yeah.
you're not starting a business or anything, uh, just asking people questions and doing a podcast is a great way to go about it.
Yeah. And I would just make sure, the only thing I'd add on to that is basically, because it's great advice to also, look within your network. And clearly what we talked about podcast wise, the only thing I'll say is a lot of times people choose the more comfortable things of like, oh, well, I want to do real estate and my aunt does real estate or whatever. And it's like, and they'll choose those to be like, oh, well, that's way more comfortable than starting a podcast. But here's the thing. Sometimes family members can actually be really great resources if they meet these criteria, though.
Yeah.
You need to I shouldn't say only, but in most scenarios take advice from people who are either where you want to be, or you really respect their trajectory on where they're going, and it's somewhere similar to where you want to be going.
Yeah.
Right. And because like there might be, your uncle who's, a real estate agent or whatever, and you might want to be a real estate agent, and he might, make like let's say 45K a year, which is awesome, like props to him. But my point is, if your goal is to be made, and he might have been in the industry for like 10 years, right? And there are things you can learn from him just about like the baseline and whatnot. But like when it comes to being a real estate agent that makes 7 figures a year, if that's your goal, you're not going to want to take like a ton of advice from him. Like you really want to surround yourself with people who have done what you want to do or on a good trajectory to do so. and take advice from them, which is why I love the podcast. Because a lot of us, at least I'm kind of making an assumption here, but I think it's an accurate assumption. A lot of us don't have those types of people in our immediate network. And that's why I love podcasting, is because it allows you not to settle and do what's comfortable. And just like, and don't get me wrong, like if you have a family member that qualifies that criteria, of course, leverage that. That's where you should look first, but don't do it just because it's more comfortable. And you can use it as a starting place to just learn a bit more, but like really be careful about who you take advice from. And, ask yourself, is this person like, because some advice might help you with X, but it might also hurt you in this area of your life or whatever too. And that might also be the area of the life where the person is like, not fulfilled. So I look for like rounded people who, are excelling in different areas. When I was a lot more active on podcasting, that's who I'd try to be interviewing and learning from.
And I think that's a really important note, that when you go about learning from, different resources and, different people, just taking what I like to view my education from a space that I've always kind of come from, is take what's going to help you grow and discard what's not aligned with who you are and where you're going.
Definitely.
Because you're gonna meet people that have certain ideas, certain things that they believe in that maybe that you don't. And that's okay, to each their own. But taking the gems, right? And keeping the gems for yourself, that's such an important skill to be aware of. And so that when you go into any situation, you take those gems, you're like, okay, I'm going to add this and do that. I'm going to, learn this new habit, or I'm going to implement this thing, and then discard whatever is just not necessary for you at the time. And if it becomes necessary, then great. But at the specific moment where it's not relevant, that's okay. You don't have to do everything someone says, or take everything someone says and implement it into your life, or take it on and be like, oh, because such and such says this, I have to do it. No, take the things that are aligned with who you are, with where you want to go, and just implement it in that way versus coming at it from everything. I think that's a really important note to make. With that, I'll ask you one last question. And that is, if you had one piece of advice, general advice, for a kid or teen between the age of like 7 to like 15, 17, what would your one piece of advice be?
I mean, you said 7 to, sorry, what was the age range again?
Like 7 to 17.
7 to 17, okay. One piece of advice. I mean, it's, questions like these are always a bit tough because it all depends on what that person's goals are and like what they want out of life. So I guess my first piece of advice, I'm kind of breaking the rule here by giving two, but my first piece is ask yourself that question. And if you don't know, it makes a lot of sense because you're so freaking young. Like, try a whole bunch of different stuff. I mean, so that way you can learn and you can know. First and foremost, just try things. It's really get uncomfortable. Like we've talked about this before, but like, okay, draw two circles. In circle A, put everything you currently have, and in circle B, everything that you want in your life, right? And maybe you even put stuff that you don't want, right? You know that you don't want to be doing blank anymore. You don't want to whatever. What separates circle A from what you currently have to circle B of what you want and what you don't want is discomfort. It is simply discomfort. There is no way that you will achieve anything in that circle B while, not getting uncomfortable. And so like the more you can like just, it's like get good sleep, get uncomfortable, you're just supercharging your life, because now you're approaching life with good energy, and you're approaching life with basically this mentality that is going to help you like just excel so much quicker through things that otherwise slow people down. So that, and then really the last thing, I know it's only technically one, unfortunately I can't stick to one. The last thing I'll say is really just back to the advice, like surround your environment is so freaking important. Everything we talked about is like this. If you were to surround yourself with 5 Gavins and 5 Shivanis or whatever, hypothetically, and I think quality is way more important than quantity, just on the record, but let's say that there were like, like 5 people who were getting good sleep, who were, fulfilled with what they're doing, who are excelling personally and professionally, who whatever. If you're hanging out with 5 of them, you're going to be the 6th. So if there's 5 people that are getting good sleep and you want to get really good sleep, the hack is literally to get in that environment. And again, you can do that digitally. It's ideal to have it physically and digitally, but you can have digital actually be important in your physical environment. depending on how much time and energy and resources you invest into that. And it's really like, that is so important, that who you hang out with and talk with and see and consume, like what you're consuming and seeing, are going to change your beliefs around a lot of different things, and your beliefs change. Like, for example, if you never listened to this podcast, you probably would never, or not never, but either later or not be introduced to a lot of these principles, right? And it's like, your beliefs change your thoughts change your words change your actions from your habits, and your habits from your reality. So it starts with belief. And when you're in the right environment, or it can help elevate your beliefs, and you're in the wrong environment, it can drag down your beliefs. And so it's really important to be in an environment that supports the goals that you want, right? Like, if you want to be a bodybuilder, go hang out with a lot of bodybuilders. But again, you want to ask yourself holistically, ideally, these are bodybuilders that also are fulfilled, who, are good emotionally, spiritually, etc. But yeah, so my point is, really, if you want to hack everything, you can try to implement these things all on yourself, but you need to get in the right environment. And if you can find a way to get into the environments of people who exhibit these traits, your life is just going to be so much better from being around them, and like just asking simple questions and seeing how things go. So really, I think the number one thing would be to get yourself in an environment that is going to be advantageous and beneficial to the way that you want to grow.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time today and chatting with me. I know that I personally got a lot of value, and just like even uh, things that I already knew, just even deeper, kind of like
Yeah.
expand. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, that's a good way to look at that. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Of course. I really appreciate you having me. It was a great time. So thank you so much.